Welcome to the Daily Vibecasting.
Today, we're diving into what might be the single greatest missed investment in the history of tech. We're talking about a decision that cost a company nearly $1 trillion.
We're also getting deep on why Linus Torvalds thinks the whole AI boom is a bubble just waiting to pop.
And we'll break down a high-stakes data challenge at Bloomberg that requires a 60-fold speed increase.
Our mission is simple. We take the day's biggest trending posts, we pull out the critical insights, and we map out the second-order effects. We want to make sure you walk away not just informed, but armed with the context that actually matters.
Okay, let's get into it.
Let's start with the money, because the lead story today isn't about the market going up or down. It's about a company that got out way too early.
And just the absolutely staggering cost of what looked like a short-term win.
We are talking about Sega and NVIDIA. The whole story was laid out in a viral history lesson from Nicholas Patane, detailing the relationship between these two giants.
One giant now, one, not so much.
Exactly. So here's the setup, and it's just wild. Back in 1996, Sega makes a $5 million investment in NVIDIA.
But this wasn't some, visionary move. It wasn't like they saw the future of AI.
Not at all. It was basically the result of a failed contract. NVIDIA was supposed to design the graphics chip for the Sega Dreamcast. The deal fell through, and instead of a cash settlement.
Sega took equity, a $5 million stake.
Right. So a few years go by, NVIDIA has its IPO in 1999, and Sega decides to cash out.
And they made $15 million, a quick, clean 3x profit in about 4 years.
On paper, that looks like a successful, safe, short-term exit.
And that $15 million profit might just be the single most expensive profit ever taken in corporate history.
This is where it gets just painful. Jensen Huang, NVIDIA's CEO, has noted that if Sega had just held on to those shares, that same $5 million stake would be worth approximately $1 trillion today.
$1 trillion.
Yeah.
It just completely reframes what a good business decision even is.
When you look at NVIDIA's market cap now, somewhere north of $4.4 trillion, the difference between taking a quick 3x and holding on for 25 years it's an existential amount of money.
It's the ultimate lesson, isn't it? Do you take the safe money now, or do you bet on the entire disruptive nature of a new technology? The replies were all making the same comparison. It's Blockbuster saying no to Netflix, but with way, way more zeros.
But I have to push back a little on that misconviction idea. Sega was a public company. They were struggling in the console wars.
Sure.
Isn't a guaranteed $15 million profit in 1999 the responsible choice? For their shareholders, holding a volatile tech stock for 25 years is pure speculation, right?
That is the core of the debate. It's foresight versus fortune. And you're right, a public company has shareholders breathing down its neck for quarterly returns. Taking the profit seems responsible.
So what was the mistake?
The mistake was a failure of imagination. It's about conviction in the foundational tech. Sega saw a graphics card supplier. They didn't see that NVIDIA was building the literal platform that all future tech would run on.
They failed to see the architectural shift.
And that failure of vision is why they missed the $1 trillion boat.
That's a pretty high bar for foresight. Okay, so from historical valuation, let's pivot to a very current, very high-stakes financial tech problem.
A problem that's all about speed and efficiency right now.
Yeah, this isn't about missed money. It's about not wasting a single microsecond. A senior software engineer at Bloomberg, at Shishirsh, posted this incredible performance challenge.
And it went completely viral with developers.
So they have 540 services. Each one produces a massive 100-gigabyte proprietary binary file every single day.
And the challenge is querying all of that data, but they can't store the decoded version because it's just too big.
And here's the critical part, the timeline. Right now, if they decode the file and pipe it to a standard search tool like grep, it takes 2 minutes.
2 minutes. In finance, that's an eternity. That's geologic time. The target is 2 seconds.
A 60x speed improvement. They need it for production stability because latency in that world is literally cost and risk.
So the question becomes, how do you solve it? You need to read 100 gigs of data, you can't store the result, and you need an answer almost instantly.
You have to bypass, 99% of the work?
Exactly. And the solutions that came up in the replies are, they're incredibly sophisticated. The core idea is you stop treating the file as one giant thing you have to decode.
Okay.
Instead, you build an index when the data is first ingested. You create a tiny, super fast map, an index, that tells you exactly where certain records or timestamps are inside that huge binary file.
So wait, index building and offset-based decoding. Can you break that down? What are we actually skipping by doing that?
You're skipping the CPU cycles you'd waste parsing data you don't care about. With the index, you can use that offset to jump straight to the relevant byte range in the file, decode only that tiny little piece, and run your query.
It's like having a table of contents for a 100-chapter book, so you can skip right to the one page you need.
Precisely. And that conversation led right to things like zero-copy formats, like flat buffers. Industry analysis shows that can cut your decode overhead by up to 90%. Zero copy means the data, once it's loaded, doesn't need to be moved around in memory. It's read directly.
It's all about designing the data architecture for speed from the very beginning.
Right. It's not just about the tool you use to search. It's about how the data itself is structured for retrieval.
That tension between rigorous architecture and the need for speed is the perfect bridge to our next topic, the very messy, very speculative world of AI and coding.
Yeah, speaking of things that need a bit more rigor.
Let's jump right into the big debate around AI's actual value. We're looking at the, let's say, measured views of the creator of Linux, Linus Torvalds. This came from a viral post by Eugen JUW.
Right, from a Linux Foundation interview.
And Torvalds gave us two classic statements. First, he said, AI is clearly a bubble. The hype and the valuation are way out ahead of the actual utility.
But at the same time, he says it is transformative, especially for skilled jobs.
He's dead on. It's both things at once. It's a bubble. We see the overvaluation every day, but it's also genuinely disruptive.
The question is, disruptive in a good way or disruptive in a way that just builds up a mountain of technical debt?
Which brings us to his second, more pointed quote. He said, "Vibe coding is great for getting into programming, but it's a horrible thing to maintain."
And for anyone who isn't a coder, vibe coding is. It's basically letting an AI assistant generate huge blocks of code for you based on a vague idea, the vibe.
And Yuchen Jin, the person who posted this, who's the former CTO of Octo AI, used that quote to point out the huge second-order problem. That vibe coding guts the point of learning to code properly. If a beginner can just generate a prototype, they skip all the hard parts, learning architecture, how to debug, how to handle edge cases.
But doesn't that lower the barrier to entry? Doesn't that speed up innovation? Even if the code isn't perfect, you get a prototype that works 80% of the time. Isn't that a win?
For prototype, maybe, but speed is not the only metric. Rigor is what matters when systems have to actually work and scale.
The issue with vibe coding is you create shallow expertise. You end up with this massive backlog of code that no human can really debug or maintain because the person who prompted never really understood the underlying logic, the architecture.
We're choosing speed over structural integrity.
And that is a technical debt tsunami just waiting to break over corporate code bases.
That tension between speed and actual rigor is playing out in creativity too. Let's look at this new holiday ad campaign.
The McDonald's one.
Yes. Culture Crave posted about the McDonald's Netherlands Christmas ad, which is fully AI generated. The visuals are striking, but also deeply unsettling.
Yeah, you get these sickly sweet holiday scenes that suddenly turn chaotic, Christmas trees exploding, that sort of thing. The tagline positions McDonald's as the stable option.
It is the ultimate AI paradox. The Dutch studio behind it had to come out and say, AI didn't make this film, we did. They claim they hardly slept 4 weeks, just refining the prompts.
So they're emphasizing the human oversight, the hard work of prompt crafting, to justify their budget.
But the most telling detail, the one that really undermines that claim, is that they disabled the YouTube comments immediately.
Why? Because the public could tell. The visuals are deep in the uncanny valley. People can spot that subtle, unsettling lack of human precision from a mile away.
Exactly. They spent weeks on prompts, but the result still feels off. The agency is stuck defending the process, not the product, because the public sees the flaws and knows they're from the machine.
We're in this weird middle ground where AI can create, but it can't hide its own flaws yet.
From structural risk in art, let's pivot to real-world structural integrity and safety.
Okay.
A really serious global event posted by @Vocaholic1, a magnitude 7.6 earthquake near Hachinohe, Japan. We're talking intense, prolonged shaking and a half-meter tsunami alert.
An upper 6 on their local scale, that should be catastrophic.
It should be. But what's so profound here is the outcome. The real story is what didn't happen. Minimal reported damage, and critically, 0 reported fatalities so far.
That's incredible for a quake of that magnitude that would have leveled cities in other parts of the world.
And that success is a direct result of Japan's post-2011 Tohoku reforms. This is a masterclass in resilient architecture.
We're talking about base isolation, damping systems, things designed to absorb that kinetic energy.
If you compare this to the 2001 Bhuj quake in India, a similar magnitude that killed over 20,000 people, the difference is engineering. It proves that aggressive, expensive risk mitigation pays off in, well, unlosable lives.
It's an incredible example of high-value utility. Now let's talk about maybe less valuable utility.
Yeah, we've got two pieces of trending tech to compare. On the one hand, from at Nixcraft, a genuinely useful open-source USB gadget.
Right, for the Raspberry Pi.
You plug it in, and it automatically shows the Pi's host name and IP addresses on a little screen. It just emulates a keyboard to run a few commands.
That is actually valuable. If you're a sysadmin managing a bunch of headless devices, that's a simple, cheap solution that cuts out a lot of friction. Pure efficiency.
Now for the contrast. A video with 1.8 million views from @NobodyRobert of an automated trolley disinfection station at a Woolworths supermarket.
Ah, yes. The sanitation theater. These popped up everywhere in 2020, and the data says they do reduce bacteria by 99%.
But the real question is, how much does that 99% matter if the risk was tiny to begin with?
It's negligible now. The CDC says surface transmission accounts for less than 10% of respiratory virus cases. The replies were all satire, calling it the neurotic nook.
So what's the second-order effect?
It's an expensive, low-utility expenditure that ultimately gets baked into grocery costs. It's selling pandemic-era anxiety as a modern utility, a high-cost solution for a very low-risk problem.
From utility theater to Hollywood memory theater, let's look at how memory and fact get blurred.
Okay.
First, this hilarious clip from @RealEmmerhan of Gwyneth Paltrow completely forgetting she was in Spider-Man: Homecoming.
I saw this. She's on Jon Favreau's cooking show and insists we weren't in Spider-Man.
Until he has to firmly remind her she was in the post-credits scene. It seems so aloof, but it actually says a lot about how these blockbusters are made.
It really does. Her part was probably a tiny 20-second scene filmed in total isolation on a green screen to avoid leaks.
So for the actors, these little cameos in these huge ensemble films just blur together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now contrast that lack of memory with some real passionate film love. Culture reminded everyone that Quentin Tarantino's favorite superhero movie is Superman Returns.
The 2006 Bryan Singer film.
Yep. Tarantino loved it so much, he jokingly gave Singer a fictional Best Director award at Cannes. He praised its mythic tone, its operatic quality over just being another action movie.
But the comments on that post show how complicated Hollywood history is now.
Oh, yeah. The debate about the film's artistic merit immediately gets tangled up with the controversies around both Singer and the co-star Kevin Spacey. The art is constantly being reevaluated based on the actions of the creators.
Reevaluation is definitely needed when we talk about the limits of human physics. Let's end this segment with two examples of pure physical extremes.
Right.
@HistoryDefined posted about the highest G-force ever voluntarily experienced. U.S. Air Force Captain Eli Beating. He endured 82.6 Gs for a fraction of a second in a 1958 rocket sled test.
82.6 Gs. For context, that's like having 8 adults instantly stand on your chest. It was for an aviation safety study, and it just dwarfs other records, like John Stapp's 46.2 Gs.
Though the context reminds us involuntary Gs can be much higher. An F1 driver hit 111 Gs in a crash.
It's just incredible what the body can withstand, even for a moment.
And on the other side of that physical spectrum is dynamic athleticism. A viral clip from @HumanDoesKnow context of a bouldering move, a dyno, with this fluid midair hand switch.
And the caption is something like, me thinking I can do this with no training.
Which perfectly captures the steep training curve. Sports science says elite climbers doing that are generating forces up to 4.5 times their body weight.
It's a great contrast. One is about survival under immense pressure. The other is about refined, focused strength built over years of training.
We have two quick niche hits before we wrap. First, a post from @BoysBuildBoys on RC car racing that sparked a ton of nostalgia.
Yeah, the replies were just flooded with people remembering old video games like Revolt. It shows that hunger for physical, real-world gaming.
And finally, a surprisingly scientific pet trend from @TheFiggin. Fish bridges.
The little acrylic tunnels that let fish swim between tanks.
It's not just a cute gimmick. Aquaculture research actually confirms that these kinds of structural enrichments reduce stress hormones and aggression in captive fish. It's legitimate behavioral science.
A good reminder that even a niche trend can have real science behind it.
So after all that, what's the big picture here?
I think this whole deep dive has been a study in balancing risk and reward and the rigor you need for long-term survival. Whether it's the financial risk of holding NVIDIA, the physical risk of an earthquake, or the structural risk of vibe coding.
Hmm.
Every system, financial, technological, architectural, has to be optimized for resilience, for long-term stability, not just for short-term speed.
My provocative thought for you to take away comes straight from that Sega and NVIDIA story. The long-term compounding effects can be astronomical, but they require this unwavering conviction. So if you're faced with a safe, quick 3x return today versus a high uncertainty, massive long-term hold.
A decision everyone faces with new tech or early equity.
Exactly. How much conviction do you really have in your own bets, and are you willing to see it through for a decade or more?
And my prediction, based on the collision we're seeing between AI's push into creative fields, like that McDonald's ad, and the deep skepticism from people like Torvalds calling it a bubble, I predict the next 48 hours will bring a lot more scrutiny on the IP origins and the true non-PR inflated costs of making high-budget AI-assisted media. The industry has to prove the value beyond just the hype.
That's the Daily Guide.
We'll see you next time.